She married the cowboy to survive, but he had loved her for years. The winter of 1887 was the coldest anyone in the valley could remember. Snow covered the fields, rivers froze solid, and every family struggled to survive. Nora Whitaker had already lost everything. Her father had died the previous spring, her mother had become ill, and the small farm they owned was taken by the bank. With nowhere to go, Nora believed her life was over. One evening, the town sheriff brought unexpected news. Ethan Carter, a quiet cowboy who owned a large ranch outside town, had offered Nora a marriage of convenience. He promised her a warm home, food, and protection through the winter. In return, she would help care for the ranch until spring. Nora had never spoken more than a few words to Ethan. He was known as a hard-working man who kept to himself. People respected him but knew little about him. She wondered why he would make such an offer. With no other choice, Nora accepted. The wedding was small. Only the preacher, the sheriff, and 2 neighbors attended. No music, no celebration, only a promise spoken before God. On the first night at the ranch, Ethan showed Nora her room. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "Nothing will happen unless you want it to." Those words surprised her. She had expected a cold and demanding husband, but instead she found kindness. Days turned into weeks. Every morning Ethan woke before sunrise to feed the cattle while Nora prepared breakfast. She cleaned the house, baked bread, and slowly transformed the lonely ranch into a real home. Although they lived together, there was still a distance between them. Ethan rarely spoke about himself. Nora believed he had married her only because he needed someone to help during winter. One snowy afternoon, while searching the old barn for blankets, Nora discovered an old cedar chest hidden beneath dusty blankets. Curious, she opened it. Inside were dozens of carefully preserved items. A blue ribbon, a pressed wildflower, a faded photograph from the town fair. And beneath them all, letters. Every letter carried one name. Nora Whitaker. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the first letter. "Dear Nora, today you smiled at an old woman in the market. You probably never noticed me watching, but I knew then that your heart was different from everyone else's." Another letter. "I wanted to ask you to dance tonight, but I lost my courage." Another. "If I ever become worthy enough, maybe one day I'll tell you how long I've loved you." There were more than 50 letters. None had ever been sent. Some were 5 years old. Others were newer. Tears filled Nora's eyes. At that moment Ethan entered the barn. He froze. His face turned pale. "You weren't supposed to find those." Nora looked at him silently. "You loved me all these years." Ethan lowered his head. "Since the first day I saw you." "Then why didn't you tell me?" He smiled sadly. "You deserved someone better than a lonely cowboy." Nora couldn't believe what she was hearing. All this time she had believed their marriage was only about survival. For Ethan, it had been the answer to years of silent prayers. That evening they sat beside the fireplace. For the first time, Ethan told her everything. He had watched her care for sick neighbors, help children, and work beside her father in the fields. He admired her kindness long before he admired her beauty. Several times he planned to ask for her hand. Each time he lost confidence. Then tragedy struck her family. When he heard she had nowhere to go, he made the only offer he could. Not because he expected love. Only because he couldn't bear seeing her suffer. Nora remained silent for several minutes. Finally she whispered, "You saved my life." Ethan shook his head. "No, you gave mine meaning." Weeks passed. Something changed between them. Their conversations grew longer. Their laughter became more frequent. Instead of eating in silence, they shared stories. Instead of walking alone, they explored the snowy fields together. One evening Ethan built Nora a wooden swing beneath the old oak tree. "I remembered you saying as a little girl you always wanted one," he admitted. "You remembered that." "I remember everything." Spring finally arrived. The snow melted. Flowers returned to the valley. One morning the sheriff visited the ranch. "You know," he laughed, The agreement was only until spring. Nora smiled. I know. You can leave whenever you wish. She looked toward Ethan, who was repairing a fence in the distance. For a moment she imagined returning to town. Starting over. Living alone. Then she realized something. Home wasn't the ranch. Home was the man waiting outside. She walked toward him. Ethan. He looked up. If you still want this marriage. I do. She smiled through happy tears. So do I. For the first time since their wedding, Ethan gently took her hand. Not because they had to survive, but because they had finally fallen in love together. Years later, their ranch became famous not for its cattle, but for its kindness. Travelers always found food, lost children found shelter, and lonely strangers found hope. The old cedar chest remained in the attic. Sometimes Nora opened it and reread those unsent letters. She never let Ethan throw them away. They remind me, she would say with a smile, that the greatest love stories don't always begin with romance. Sometimes, they begin with quiet kindness, patient waiting, and one brave decision made in the middle of winter. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment. Thanks for watching.